The wind screamed through the hollow gaps of the broken glass as a teenage girl stood trembling on the edge of a tall school building. Her wrists were bound tightly with handcuffs, her green sweater torn at the sleeves, and her eyes wide with terror. Behind her, two boys in blue and yellow varsity jackets laughed cruelly, pointing at her as if her pain were entertainment. "Nobody cares about you," one of them shouted. The words pierced her heart deeper than the cold air ever could. Then, without hesitation, they pushed her. For a single horrifying moment, the world seemed to stop, and in that stillness, she felt the weight of every cruel word ever thrown at her crash against her soul. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, in standing up for those who can't defend themselves, and in giving people second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Together, we can spread stories that remind the world what compassion truly means. Her name was Emma Lewis, a quiet 16-year-old who never wanted attention. She loved sketching, writing in her notebook, and sitting under the old oak tree behind the school where the world felt safe. But safety was something she hadn't truly known in a long time. Ever since she transferred to Ridgeview High, Emma had been the target of mockery. Her shy nature and thrift store clothes made her an easy mark for the popular crowd, especially the two seniors, Ryan and Chase, who wore their charm like armor and cruelty like a sport. It started small. Snide remarks about her shoes, a shove in the hallway, her sketchbook tossed into the trash. Teachers didn't notice. Friends didn't speak up. The school was loud, but her pain existed in silence. Then the bullying grew bolder, videos recorded, laughter echoing in locker rooms, rumors whispered through hallways until she became invisible, not because people couldn't see her, but because they chose not to. Emma's mother worked double shifts at a diner, struggling to keep food on the table. Emma never told her about the bullying. She didn't want to add more worry to a woman who already carried too much. But the truth was, Emma's nights had become sleepless. She would stare at the cracked ceiling, wondering if her existence even mattered. Her art, once filled with color and imagination, turned into pages of gray shadows and storm clouds. Then came that Friday afternoon. The seniors were celebrating Senior Prank Day, a tradition that often blurred the line between fun and cruelty. Ryan and Chase found Emma alone by the lockers, sketching quietly. "Hey, artist girl," one of them said mockingly. "We've got a challenge for you." Before she could react, they grabbed her by the arms, dragging her up to the rooftop through the back stairwell where no one would see. The city wind roared around them as they taunted her, calling it a joke, saying she should prove she was brave enough to fly. They handcuffed her wrists with a pair of metal cuffs stolen from a prop used in the school's theater club. Emma's voice shook as she begged them to stop. But they only laughed harder, pretending it was harmless fun. Then, in a moment that would forever scar their lives, they shoved her through the shattered window. Emma fell. Time slowed. The world blurred into streaks of blue sky and glass reflections. But instead of hitting the ground, she crashed through a lower-level safety awning being repaired for construction. It tore apart under her weight but broke her fall enough to save her life. Workers below shouted in panic, rushing to her side. She was bruised, bleeding, but alive. News spread quickly. The school was thrown into chaos. Police sirens wailed, and Ryan and Chase were taken away in handcuffs of their own, real ones this time. For days, the story dominated every screen. Students whispered, teachers wept, and the community that once ignored her pain suddenly claimed outrage. But Emma was gone, not physically, but emotionally. She had been transferred to a rehabilitation center to recover, far away from the noise, the pity, and the fake apologies. Weeks passed. The two boys faced suspension, community service, and endless online hate. But beneath their bravado, something began to break. Chase couldn't sleep. He replayed the moment over and over, the scream, the fall, the sound of shattering glass. Ryan, once the confident leader, started isolating himself, haunted by guilt. The laughter that once bonded them now felt like poison. They didn't know how to make it right. Months later, something unexpected happened. During a school assembly about bullying awareness, a speaker walked onto the stage. The crowd gasped. It was Emma. Her wrists bore faint scars from the cuffs, but her eyes were stronger than ever. She stood straight, holding a small sketchbook to her chest. The silence in the gym was deafening. She took a deep breath and began to speak. She didn't talk about revenge. She didn't name her bullies. Instead, she spoke about forgiveness, about finding strength in pain, and how heroes aren't people who fly, they're the ones who rise again after being pushed to the ground. They thought I would fall forever, she said softly, but what they didn't know is that sometimes falling teaches you how to soar. As she spoke, Ryan and Chase sat in the back row, their faces pale and eyes wet. They weren't excused from what they did, they knew they never would be, but hearing her words cracked something open inside them. For the first time, they didn't feel like victims of consequence, they felt human, broken, and desperately wishing they could undo the past. Emma finished her speech to a standing ovation. Afterward, she quietly left the stage and went to the art room, her favorite place. She opened her sketchbook and began to draw again. This time, the page wasn't filled with darkness. It showed a girl standing on the edge of a tall building, wind rushing through her hair, but instead of falling, she had wings. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe, not just for the message, but for every person who's ever felt alone, unseen, or unloved. Your support helps keep stories of hope alive for those who need them most. And before this story ends, I want you to comment below with one word that describes what kindness means to you, because sometimes, one word can change someone's entire day. Emma Lewis was once the girl everyone ignored. Now, she's the girl who taught an entire school what courage looks like. And though she never needed a parachute to survive that fall, she proved that real heroes don't fall, they rise, again and again, stronger than ever before.